Hi there, welcome back to another Crypto Dave video. So today I'm joined by Rowan, Business Development Director at Horizen, and he's joined me on the channel today to talk about the new sidechain betas on the Horizen blockchain, as well as various other topics such as Horizen developer environment, Faucet updates, and much more. And as always, we wrap up with some price prediction for Bitcoin at the end of the year. So thanks very much to Rowan for joining me, and on with the interview. Fantastic. So thanks very much, Rowan, for joining me today. For those of you who don't know, Rowan's a Business Development Director at Horizen. And before we jump into the different pieces we're going to go over today on Horizen, and there's quite a lot that's new and there's quite a lot going on at the moment. But do you want to start by just giving us a brief sort of background, how you got into cryptocurrency and then how you made the kind of like the jump over to Horizen?
Sure, can do. So my background is a little bit more traditional. So traditional business background, primarily working in oil and gas. I'd been dabbling with cryptocurrency mining on the side after a friend of mine had kind of told me that I should really check it out. Because I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to building stuff, either out of wood or metal or building computers and hardware. That sort of stuff's always been fun for me. And a great escape from kind of the normal 8 till 6 office type environment.
Absolutely.
So I started, absolutely. So I started building little GPU-based graphics card miners on the side, and I kind of filled up my office at home, and that quickly became 2 rooms, and then that quickly became the garage, and then it just got a little bit out of hand. And as time progressed, profitability started to increase as kind of interest started to gather in cryptocurrency. And when it got to the kind of mass hysteria of 2016, 2017, it was profitable enough for me just to say, you know what, forget oil and gas. I'm going to jump in and do this full time. So I expanded from the garage, set up a small mining operation in Scotland, got a little office and a couple of warehouse type units, filled them full of both graphics cards and ASICs.
Fantastic.
Spent a couple of months making a kind of clean room and designing a heat extraction system and just having some fun playing about with stuff. And it was through that business that I kind of encountered Horizen. Horizen launched in May 2017.
Yep.
And by kind of May 2017, my operation was running. And my original kind of, I guess, romantic view of running a cryptocurrency mining operation was it's going to be great. I'm going to have all this free time. Fantastic. I'm not going to have to go to the office. This is going to be brilliant. My life's changed. And within about, I don't know, 3 months, I was bored, seriously bored. It was too drastic a life change. So I was hunting for something to do. Horizen needed a little bit of help with kind of community creation. There was nobody in the UK doing anything with Horizen at the time. So I kind of reached out and offered just to do some low-level event attendance and networking and things like that to try and help educate people in the UK as to what Horizen and the currency Zen was all about. And that kind of just snowballed. From there, I just kind of got more and more involved. And the kind of way I usually phrase it is the team basically kidnapped me. And I've been with them ever since. Now, sidechains are not necessarily something new. There's a variety of different projects that are working on different implementations of sidechains. And this is what Rolf was talking about before with our alpha release previously. What makes our particular model unique is that we are trying to provide a lot more flexibility in design. And we're also doing it in a way that doesn't require trusted parties or trusted certifiers.
Yep.
So a traditional sidechain system relies on a small group of certified or trusted nodes or parties, whatever you want to call them. And it's this small group of entities or people who can basically call the shots on what is and isn't valid.
Yeah.
And that works in some way. It gives the people that design the system quite a lot of control. But for me personally, and also for the wider Horizen team, blockchain only really, when you boil it down, provides 2 fundamental values. It's given you digital immutability, like to replace the carving in stone type thing or the fireproof safe in your corner. And it's decentralizing trust.
So what's kind of changed? What can we look forward to coming up and the kind of timescales that we can look forward to?
Sure, absolutely. So This is obviously a kind of research and development driven project. We're trying to do something that hasn't been done before. We've managed to amass a ridiculously competent engineering team in Milan, in Italy. And these guys are really pushing the boundaries of what is actually possible with both zero knowledge cryptography and a kind of scaling architecture that we're deploying in this way. So we've kind of went through a variety of different iterations as time's gone on. The overall roadmap hasn't really changed. It's just been kind of iterative improvements, finding issues, resolving them, things like that. So original plan, alpha was to launch and basically show what the concept of what we're building actually was. So we obviously released quite a heavy, detailed technical paper. Alpha was kind of like, let's take this paper and actually make something tangible and real out of it, although with only very, very limited functionality. So it was kind of throwing out there for the world to see that it exists, it's real, it's not just us talking about something, it's here. But like I say, functionality was very, very, very limited. Moving into beta now, we are pretty much providing the full functionality of what we're aiming for, and we're also providing the first reference design. So one of the cool things about the architecture we're using is that it's decoupled from our main chain. And when I say decoupled, I just mean that the side chains and the main chain don't need to be exactly the same, but they can still communicate information and value back and forth. Why is that cool? Well, it means that we can have a different consensus mechanism on the side chains to what we use for our main chain. So we're providing flexibility by decoupling the two. That flexibility is in a couple of different ways. It means that people can develop their product, service, or application using the consensus mechanism that actually meets the need of what they're designing, and also means they don't have to use a particular programming language. So what we're trying to do is give people the flexibility to build in the programming language that they think best suits the app and that they're actually experienced in using.
Fantastic.
Now,
so, for example, you could build a side chain, as you say, if you wanted something with really large throughput, it could be proof of stake or delegated proof of stake or something like that. It could be written in C++ or Java or whatever. And then you'll just have various rules, I presume, that it must adhere to, but is it mainly on the kind of the on-ramp and off-ramp point?
Exactly. So we've designed something called a cross-chain transfer protocol. And ultimately what this does is enable us to send Zen from the main chain to side chains, forward transfer, and there's also something called a backward transfer to get it back out of the side chain into the main chain. So as long as the product, service, or application adheres to the rules of the cross-chain transfer protocol, pretty much everything else is flexible. You can create your own logic, you can use your own programming language, but it's worth mentioning that that's quite daunting. And throwing an SDK out without providing reference designs, I think, would be a big mistake. So rather than just having this ridiculously flexible blockchain deployment toolkit, if you like, we're providing a reference design, and the first reference design is included in beta, and it is a proof of stake design using a modified version of Ouroboros Praus. The SDK itself is written in Java.
Absolutely. And will Zen be the transactional currency for all these kind of side chains, will it?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you want to run a Horizen sidechain, you need to kind of fuel it in a similar way to fueling a kind of smart contract or something of that nature. So in Ethereum, you fuel with gas. In the Horizen ecosystem, you're fueling your sidechains with Zen.
Okay.
And that's a really important point because that actually, in terms of Zen as a currency, it's kind of once sidechains are actually in the wild, it changes the demand curve entirely for Zen as a currency and also kind of converts it into more of a collateral asset.
Yeah, so that creates a buying pressure for Zen. It's not just necessarily a speculative kind of asset to kind of buy like many kind of cryptocurrencies, but it's something that's going to be used and required to be used to run all these different kind of sidechains that you're hoping to get onto Horizen.
Precisely, absolutely.
And where do the existing node structure? So at the moment you have secure nodes, don't you? And then is it super nodes, the larger ones?
Yep.
So where will they fit into the sidechains? Will consensus and work that's required for the sidechains actually be completed on the nodes?
So the whole idea with nodes, the secure nodes and super nodes in the Horizen ecosystem, they're not just a kind of master node type program to soak up supply and assist with governance. I mean, that's part of it for sure. But it's nodes for a purpose. They're there to provide actual infrastructure for sidechains to run on top of.
Yeah.
And that's why there's quite strict hardware requirements for both secure and for super nodes. If you want to launch a product service application on top of a Horizen sidechain, you're going to need node infrastructure for that to work. And you can incentivize the nodes to basically choose your product to support. So it's going to be extra revenue streaming down through to secure and super node operators.
So, Rowan, so you've moved now from alpha into beta, or you're about to move into kind of beta. What's the kind of timescale kind of going forward for, I suppose, getting the first sidechains live, moving from beta to production, et cetera, et cetera?
Originally launched in alpha. That's been ongoing for an extended period while we prepare everything that's required to move into beta. The plan is to do a kind of beta preview. That beta preview will be full functional in terms of beta deliverables. The only missing item will be a full suite of documentation. The reason we've left that out is we really want to spend more time making sure the documentation is really robust, really detailed, and really useful, so that anybody that jumps into this for the first time can really understand the nuances of what's been created, why it is something to be excited about, and why it's something that people should really start building on and taking advantage of. So we're going to take a little bit of extra time to deliver the documentation. So that'll probably follow. I mean, we're looking at beta preview kicking off towards the end of June. Documentation probably going to follow about a month later. And then really how long we stay in beta is kind of a function of how well beta goes. We need to have as many people as possible jump into the beta, tear the SDK apart, provide feedback, start actually building stuff. So it'll operate on the testnet to start with. That's worth highlighting. So you'll be using TestZen, but beyond that, functionality will be there. So we can have people come in, build product services applications, test them, battle test all of the different components, but most likely we're going to be moving into production. In our head, the plan to move into production is kind of Q1-ish next year.
Okay, so during the beta phase, you're hoping not just to have internal sidechains that you develop yourself, but also external sidechains written by third parties. And is some of that in sort of a collaboration with Horizen Labs? I know that you have the sort of commercial side of it, Horizen Labs. I remember Rolf talking about this last time, where a company could go to them, they could give the advice and give this sort of like technical kind of implementation kind of guidance and kind of advice on how to kind of like get whatever they wanted up and running on as a sidechain. So are you hoping to get sort of like both external kind of companies on board during the beta as well as some internal stuff as well?
Exactly right. That's exactly the aim. We're really hoping to have a kind of a full range of involved parties. And there's a reason for that, because rather than focusing on creating end user products as Horizen or as Horizen Labs, the approach we've taken is to provide the tools that are required and the infrastructure that's required and the full tech stack to allow third parties to build whatever product, service, or application they want that's blockchain based on top of the Horizen stack. And the reason that we've done that is that that's a much more scalable approach to get real adoption. So rather than us trying to create a whole tranche of user-focused products, really the value that we bring is we enable others to create a whole tranche of either enterprise or end user-focused products on top of Horizen.
So you mentioned there that you're hoping to build a platform and a developer toolkit and everything that's as useful as possible to answer as many different questions as possible within different kind of industries. Are there particular kind of industries, industry sectors, types of developers or people that you're particularly looking to kind of get on board with the beta?
Yeah, so in this early kind of stage of development, Horizen Labs is kind of looking in kind of more of an industry focused way. But what we are really interested in ourselves as Horizen right now is to build up a large network of either independent or small software development organizations or individuals. Individuals as well will be more than welcome, and particularly Java developers. So obviously the SDK is written in Java.
Yep.
So what kind of a call to action, if you like, is if there are any of your listeners that are Java developers with a little bit of blockchain experience, Horizen would absolutely love to hear from you. With the SDK being written in Java, we really think there's a great opportunity here to kind of do almost a little bit of a preview, if you like, to a select group of Java developers. And this would most likely be done by way of a webinar. We're currently fleshing out the details, But the plan would be to have a webinar focused for independent developers and smaller software development companies that have an interest in learning about what this sidechain SDK actually is, technically how it works, how to deploy your first sidechain nodes and your first actual sidechain, and what it takes to start building products and services on top of it. And this isn't going to be a kind of a salesy spiel in any way, shape, or form. It's far from it. The plan here is to make this a really technical session, two-way, open conversation, led by most likely our chief architect, probably our CEO at the same time, and then a couple of different members of our engineering team.
Okay, fantastic. So if I was a Java developer, and I'm sadly not, but if I was, what's the best way of kind of like reaching out and expressing an interest or finding out what's happening with that? What's the best way of getting hold of the relevant person?
Yeah, lots of different ways you can reach out. Main way and the easiest way would just be to ping an email through to info@zensystem.io, and that'll be picked up by a member of the team. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can do Rowan@zensystem.io, or through Twitter, things like that. Quite easy to find. More than welcome to reach out whatever way.
Email address is in the description below, so if anybody wants those, they'll be below the video.
Perfect. And then that's actually a pretty good segue, because we are looking for another little group of people. Not a little group, it's a very large group of people. We're aiming to also have conversations with independent game developers. And the reason for this is that we are aiming to attract game developers to host their games on our community hub, which is essentially a kind of gamified faucet.
Oh, okay.
So the plan here is to have games hosted on the community hub. So at the moment, we've created a faucet. I should probably backtrack a little bit, explain what this is. It's called getzen.cash. That's the URL.
Yeah, I've actually done a video of this fairly recently. And I know there are some sort of gamified sort of bits to it. So if you log in sort of like every day you kind of log in, the more days you log in, the greater the amount you can kind of get from the faucet and stuff like that. I did a full video, I think it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago actually, on the Zen faucet. And there's a lot there has been a lot going on, hasn't there? Because I remember when it first launched, I don't know, but I was looking at the end of last year, some people were kind of asking about it, and you could log in every day and you could get your small amount of kind of Zen. But now there's lots of additional ways to get more. I'll put a link to the faucet video below, but that's quite interesting. You were talking about sort of gamifying it more, having more sort of game stuff around that. So just talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, absolutely. So the faucet was originally, like you said, very, very simple. You rock up on a daily basis and you get a micropayment of Zen, just like a traditional Bitcoin faucet or any other type of faucet. Marketing and growth teams in Horizen have kind of been working their magic on it and trying to really turn it into much more of a kind of community hub. So we really want to make it a fun place for people to visit on a daily basis. We want to try and kind of incentivize people to take productive action that assists the entire ecosystem. And we're also kind of inviting partners to participate in this site as well. One of the things that's coming very, very soon is the addition of a suite of games. And the cool thing here is that if you're an independent game developer, it can be pretty hard to get your game out into the wild and get any kind of real traction. So what we can offer to independent game developers is a website, getzen.cash, that's something like 2 million visitors per month. So a pretty decent level of throughput. So decent level of exposure, large, heavy footfall of traffic. But more importantly, we can layer in an incentive structure so that both the independent game developer and the game's users receive some type of incentivization. And the plan for that would be a simple 80-20 split. So 80% goes to the game's users, but the game developer also gets some incentive for hosting their game on the community hub, on the faucet.
Oh, fantastic. So they get not just exposure, but also get some monetary reward for that as well.
Absolutely. So monetary reward. So basically what we're offering is a big increase in footfall, potentially, if it's a smaller game developer, a way to get much more eyes on their game and more people playing it, a way of receiving some revenue for doing so, and a way of incentivizing their users, and not just incentivizing users with in-game currency, incentivizing users with a currency that has real world value.
Yeah.
And obviously there's also potential here to actually layer Zen into the game itself. There's always many conversations that can be had. So that's the two groups of people that we're aiming to have conversations with. If you're a Java developer with some blockchain experience, we'd love to speak to you. And if you're an independent game developer and you're interested in hosting your game on getzen.cash, we would love to speak to you. I think one really, really solid way of getting people involved in something is making it fun. And I think that's really, really, really important. It's a kind of a method that we're trying to apply to a variety of different areas. We want to even make participating in the open source development of Horizen fun. And that's an ongoing project that we have as well called Horizen Developer Environment. And what that's basically aiming to do is provide a kind of tiered incentive structure and things like a leaderboard and little digital collectibles and things like that that reward people as they progress through the kind of participation in this open source development structure. So maybe they solve like a really, really basic low level issue. And obviously everything that's done in the open source environment is checked in a kind of collaborative way before it's put into production. But maybe the new users are given the opportunity to solve relatively basic problems, but problems that still need to be solved. And maybe there's not a core team member that has the time or attention to do it. And they'll be incentivized for doing so. And then as they build up a kind of a reputation, if you like, as being a reputable person that's producing high quality code, their level of incentive increases, their status on the leaderboard increases, the digital collectibles increase, and really just trying to make it kind of more competitive and fun to jump in and participate. Because I guess one of the big problems that a lot of open source projects have is that relying entirely on open source development, if you're not Bitcoin, it's probably not going to work. So you need to have some level of team, and that team needs funding, which is why we have a treasury system and why we're eventually going to be moving to a decentralized kind of decision-making structure. But also to supplement that, you still need participation. You need people to be bought in and understand what the technology does. And the best possible way of getting people to understand what the technology does is having them roll their sleeves up and jump in.
Yeah.
So we want to make it easier for people like translators to participate in a meaningful way that actually provides value. And we want to make it more fun for the people that are heavily technical to jump in and participate in that way.
So before we kind of wrap up, something I like to do with all the people I kind of interview, and obviously, as I say, whenever I do this, this is not financial advice, but do you have a prediction for the price of Bitcoin at the end of the year?
Oof.
I ask everybody,
Ouch.
and at the end of the year, I might kind of like put them all together and see who was kind of closest.
Okay. By the end of the year, well, I certainly think we're going to be higher than we are now. I would, if I need to throw a number at it, I'm going to go 13K. I think cautiously optimistic. I'm not sure we're going to get quite the post-halving rally that I think a lot of people are expecting, just because the world's kind of semi-falling apart in some way. There's a lot of turbulence at the moment. There's a lot of choppy environment. And I hope that this really helps people understand the value that a decentralized currency can bring. And I really hope that my prediction of 13K is wildly wrong, because people start really using it as a shelter from the turbulence in the open markets.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they're quite, not just turbulent times, but almost kind of unprecedented times we're kind of going through at the moment. But thank you very much for taking the time out today. It's been really nice to speak to you, kind of, Rowan. Stay safe over there in Panama. Are you still on lockdown at the moment?
Yeah, you guys back in the UK, I'm very jealous. We have a crazy lockdown here. And I don't want to take too much time because we're just tying up. But right now in Panama, if you're male, you can leave the house on a Tuesday and a Thursday. That's it.
Oh, wow.
And you're only allowed to leave the house for a couple of hours. And it's only to go to the bank or the chemist or the supermarket. And if you're caught by the military or the police, you're fined $50,000 to $100,000. So things might be bad in the UK,
wow,
but they could be much worse.
Wow. So, yeah, that's a big incentive not to leave the house then.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, stay sane in these crazy times, Rowan. Be really nice to speak to you, and look after yourself, and hopefully catch up again maybe later in the year.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to everyone for listening.